Hello guys, my name is JCat, and today I'm going to discuss whether it's okay to have quote-unquote problematic characters or storylines, whether it's in movies or someone's OC. But before I get started, I would like to preface that this is my first time making a commentary style video, and that I'm not fully confident on how to make them or script them in a way that is entertaining or quote-unquote right. If you have any advice or critiques, that would be greatly appreciated. Also, please watch the entire video before commenting and don't jump to conclusions on my stance on topics. If you want clarification or don't understand what I am trying to say, don't jump to conclusions and just comment and ask me. Also, please pay attention to the warnings on the screen, as this video contains many mentions of dark themes. Thank you. Anyway, on with the video. There are many series, movies, books, songs, and other types of medias along with artists/writers that have characters or explain a story in their art. And in many of these characters or media, there is usually a villain, or maybe not even a villain, but maybe the protagonist that is deemed quote-unquote problematic or evil by our standards. Which, I use evil and problematic in quotes because I think those words are subjective and different for everyone. Sometimes there are even stories that contain dark material matter such as pedophilia, murder, rape, etc. This has sparked an ongoing debate or issue that many people in the online art community have, where people will have a quote problematic character or dark storyline, and others debate whether it's morally right or wrong to portray these things in art. And I'm here to give my opinion on that and explain it. Yes, I think it's alright to portray dark subject matter and characters in your stories or art, and yes, this includes things like pedophilia, murder, rape, and all that bad shit. There are some people who believe that art is a direct parallel of what a person believes, or that there is some weird Freudian slip or truth to a person based on what they draw or choose to portray, and that is simply not the case at all. Let's take movies, shows, and songs and other medias that aren't written by some Twitter artist online, such as Hannibal, the song Little Girls by Oingo Boingo, and the book Lolita. Hannibal was originally a novel series created by Thomas Harris, and essentially features a guy named Hannibal who, cannibalizes people. Just because Harris wrote depictions of Hannibal eating people and being a murderer does not mean he endorses cannibalism or murder. He doesn't even have to clarify this. I'll explain why I use this wording later. It's just kind of common sense that he doesn't eat or kill people because there's no proof. If you're not convinced and think that having a murderer character are okay and draw the line at child abuse, rape, pedophilia, etc., then I have another example. Everyone knows the controversial Oingo Boingo song, Little Girls, and many people try to defend it and say, no guys, he's not actually singing about little girls, but they in fact are. Many people also state that it's weird to sing this song, and I've actually thought that Oingo Boingo likes little girls or whatever, but they don't because long live media literacy, I guess. But what is actually happening, why they wrote the song, is because they are telling a story and making a satirization, which I will touch on later. Danny Elfman, who wrote the song, explains, "What made me write it? At that point, I was just grabbing onto thoughts that popped into my head and taking characters and seeing from their point of view. So it didn't necessarily reflect me, but it was just fun and I knew it was irrelevant. I was out to offend everybody." People forget that music is an art form and a way to express yourself, even if it doesn't reflect on who you are. Obviously, the dudes from Oingo Boingo don't touch little kids, because if they did, why would they make a song about it? It was more likely to make a satirization of old men who ogle younger girls, or to poke fun at, people who do. Which I know people are ready to fire many comments on how it's insensitive, but I'll explain my point of view after I go over Lolita. While I have never read Lolita, I do know that the writer is not a pedophile. Many people believe that Lolita was smut material, or supposed to be, sexy, because the story was written to be in the perspective of the bad guy, which once again, long live media literacy. A description of the book describes, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov is a literary classic that both captivates and challenges readers with its provocative and controversial subject matter. This novel tells the story of Humbert Humbert, a highly intelligent and deeply disturbed man who becomes infatuated with Dolores Hayes, a 12-year-old girl whom he nicknames Lolita. It continues to state, it explores the darkest corners of obsession and moral ambiguity. The novel is presented as Humbert's confessional, as he attempts to rationalize his illicit desires and actions. Nabokov's prose is both lush and poetic, drawing readers into Humbert's disturbing psyche while simultaneously repelling them. The point of Lolita was not that Nabokov likes little girls or endorsed anything in it. It was made that so you, the reader, would repel it and find ways to make it inexcusable. This is why I believe stories containing dark subject matter, yes, including worse than the stories I mentioned above, should be explored and made. It's okay to tell stories and bring awareness to issues and have it not reflect on your character and experiences. You don't have to experience these deplorable acts in order to write them, and you don't need to believe these actions. You can simply just create, because these people and these stories exist in real life and it shouldn't be censored. Speaking of censorship, let's talk about it. Censorship is the suppression of speech, public communication, or other information, including fictional media. This may be done on the basis that such material is considered objectionable, harmful, sensitive, or quote, inconvenient. Censorship is incredibly counterproductive and hinder important discussions and productive discourses surrounding these controversial topics. This is mostly prominent in books, with book bans being on the rise once more. By the way, trigger warnings and content warnings are not censorship, nor is it bad. I believe that people should choose not to subject themselves to uncomfortable topics if it makes them feel unsafe in any way. I believe in that the current zeitgeist, that topics involving morally controversial characters and stories should be explored to not only bring awareness, but to simply tell a story, or to elicit a feeling or thought, and even simply for artistic value, which artistic value isn't solely determined by beauty. It considers the work's cognitive value, the knowledge or insight it provides, its ethical implications, the values it promotes or challenges, and its art historical value, its place within the history of art. Understanding an artist's intent and the intended function of the artwork is crucial to assessing its artistic value. What message is the artist trying to convey? What purpose does the artwork serve? I think this is a nice segue into the next segment of the video. Intentions behind these problematic depictions. Many people believe that in order to properly portray these dark subject matter, that you have to take it very seriously and make sure that it's very serious and that it's done in a way that isn't insensitive or in a joking manner. And by the way, this doesn't apply to artists who romanticize or want to normalize these characters, by the way, before anyone sends me 400 messages calling me a horrible person. But I digress. I can definitely see the argument for the previous statement that you shouldn't joke about dark subject matters in a story. But I believe that intentions behind art, while important, should be more nuanced than simply, you need to be serious and make sure that you portray this story in this exact way. Which I honestly used to believe this, but since I looked into satirized controversial fictional media such as going back to Oingo Boingo Song Little Girl, my views changed. You can have silly stories with evil or bad characters without romanticizing or glorifying it. The Oingo Boingo guys wrote a silly, goofy, upbeat song with these dark, contrasting lyrics, but do not romanticize it or make it seem desirable, and I think that is okay and should apply to all forms of art. Like, there are hundreds of silly movies where characters hurt and murder other characters, but why is it bad to do that with other controversial things, or even, like, your own characters that you post online for people to see? I kind of strayed from my original video topic about people's OCs in particular, but this is all shaping up to that point, which I will mention after a small, further and more nuanced explanation of what I think should be censored or not discussed. I believe that controversial things can be discussed in both a serious and unserious way, unless it is illegal or romanticizes the topic. Illegal specifically in this context referring to child sexual abuse material or child porn in general. Justice.gov states, images of child pornography are not protected under the First Amendment rights and are illegal contraband under federal law. Section 2256 of Title 18 United States Code defines child pornography as any visual depiction of sexually explicit conduct involving a minor, someone under 18 years of age. Visual depictions include photographs, videos, digital or computer-generated images indistinguishable from an actual minor, and images created, adapted, or modified, but appear to depict an identifiable actual minor. Undeveloped film, undeveloped videotape, and electronically stored data that can be converted into a visual image of a child pornography are also deemed illegal visual depictions under federal law. Notably, the legal definition of sexually explicit conduct does not require that an image depict a child engaging in sexual activity. A picture of a naked child may constitute illegal child pornography if it is sufficiently sexually suggestive. Additionally, the age of consent for sexual activity in a given state is irrelevant. Any depiction of a minor under 18 years of age engaging in sexually explicit conduct is illegal. Federal law prohibits the production, distribution, reception, and possession of an image of a child pornography or affecting any means or facility of interstate or foreign commerce. There's obviously no excuse for drawing specifically explicit images of minors in any way, as it is quite literally against the law. at least where I live, which is in the United States of America. Now, I do not believe that explicitly written stories involving child sexual abuse material is illegal, but I do not see any reason to write it unless you are trying to genuinely write smut or being really edgy in a up way, which for the former reason is deplorable, and I kind of feel similarly for the latter reason, because I don't see why anyone could write explicit scenes of a child getting sexually abused unless for some fucked up shady reason. And I will think you're weird if you explicitly write descriptions of raping a child. This obviously doesn't apply to non-explicit mentions of it. By the way, if at any point you believe I am endorsing any of these deplorable acts I am discussing in this video, I am not trying to find excuses for these things existing. I am simply discussing and explaining different perspectives and why I believe censorship, even for controversial stories and topics, should not exist, and that open discussions around these are very important. Discussions about these are important because they exist in our society. We shouldn't ignore them just because it makes us uncomfortable. Bad people and situations exist in real life, and it's important to discuss it so that we can prevent these stories from becoming real or worse. And people who may be put in these situations, whether it be from the perpetrator's side or the victims, can get help and realize the warning signs and stop it before it worsens. Also, aside from that, these stories help us get out of an echo chamber and encourage open-mindedness. Once again, back to Oingo Boingo! Seeing them satirize something that is seen as horrible made me develop a more nuanced view on portrayals of characters and art. And that even if the point of art was to, offend people, it's still art and should be valued, as I believe some of the best art is controversial art, which I will expand on that in a different video because I really like talking about censorship and controversial art, if you couldn't tell. Anyway, enough with that. Now back onto discussing original characters and online artists. If there can be many fictional medias and characters that are written to be inherently evil or bad characters, including pedophiles, zoophiles, rapists, and much more, why is it that many young artists, or really any artists online, face so much backlash for having these characters? It's a double standard I don't get. As long as someone isn't romanticizing or glorifying these deplorable acts, or drawing anything or portraying anything illegal, I don't see a problem with it. Dark subjects are admittedly very interesting to people. That's why the true crime community, although very controversial, is huge online. People enjoy taboo subject matter because it's grotesque and interesting, and I can even argue that portraying fictional depictions is much better to consume in an enjoying way rather than real-life true crime cases. Another thing people seem to mention a lot is that an artist has to clarify that they don't endorse the things they portray in their stories, which this is kind of a more nitpicky thing, but I don't get it. Ryan Fuller doesn't have to explain he doesn't endorse eating people, nor does anyone believe he does. And as far as I'm aware, the same could be said for Nabokov. So why do people say you have to defend yourself on whether you actually agree with the characters and stories you choose to portray, but only hold the standard to small artists online? Or even big artists. I'm using small artists subjective here, by the way. I mean people who don't make big TV shows or series. Before you get onto me for using the word small artist. Sorry. I think it should be common sense to assume people don't endorse everything in their stories unless there's proof that they're actively partaking in it in real life. Anyway, to conclude, just because you portray dark subject matters and the characters or art you make doesn't mean you actively endorse it, nor does it make it a reflection of you or your experiences. Art is incredibly vast and should exist whether you agree with it or not, because art is limitless and it should explore even the darkest, most taboo things in life. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please be respectful in the comments, and I am open to your input as well. I really hope nobody misinterpreted me and that I explained myself thoroughly enough. I understand that my point of view may be difficult to understand or may be controversial and seen, I guess, as too tolerant, quote-unquote, of certain things, but I believe that my views are just very, very nuanced and even liberal or progressive for the art community, which just means I think that a lot of people are too rigid or conservative in their beliefs for art expression. I hope this doesn't come across as me being pretentious or aggressive, by the way. I don't believe everybody on the internet is like this. I don't believe, I just think a lot of people, especially younger people, get roped into a hive mind thought process online or are simply misunderstanding intentions when it comes to art, and not everyone thinks like this. I just know that I see a lot of people think this way. So, yeah. Also, I might make a completely separate video on art and censorship because the topic is very interesting to me and I'm very passionate about it, and I think people should be much more open-minded when it comes to art because I believe that artistic freedom is what really drives us as a society and that it shouldn't be silenced. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if this video was interesting, please subscribe and stick around because I plan on posting more content like this.